Many people have called attention to the recent Joe Rogan and Alex Jones podcast, episode number 911. In this episode, geoengineering is discussed. Although there was a surprising amount of actual truth included, it is very clear why the population remains confused about the single most important global threat and why it remains powerless to do anything about it. Here is an opportunity to clear up a great deal of that confusion.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think, is Trump going to do anything about the stratospheric aerosol injections?
Well, what do you think the program is, Eddie? What do you think the program is?
The director of the CIA is talking about it on YouTube. Look under John O'Brennan.
I've seen
John
it.
O'Brennan.
They talk about strategies. They talk about strategies.
Aerosol injections. It's going to cost $10 billion a year, and there's going to be some countries opposed to it because it's going to mess up the weather.
Are you telling me about atmospheric manipulation?
I'm talking about stratospheric
Geoengineering.
SAI.
I've never heard of that.
It's super important when you can break it down to 3 letters.
Yeah, let me go
that's
over
what
it.
John O'Brennan admitted in June of 2016 at the CFR.
I saw the video.
Let me comment on it.
Social media and the truth community have been deliberately flooded with this future SAI program misdirection. This keeps people from seeing the reality of the global geoengineering system that already exists right in front of them.
John O'Brennan.
I've been talking about this forever, and Joe, I'm not bashing you, but you had your TV show, made jokes about it, which I get, because a lot of it's BS. There is an entire atmospheric terraforming geoengineering manipulation. They don't call it chemtrails. They use these big antennas to manipulate the weather.
This is true. The global geoengineering system consisting of 62,500 power plants to produce the massive amounts of water vapor required to create massive storms. The global spraying program to add frequency controllable components to these cloud systems and a worldwide grid of NEXRAD/Doppler radar to manipulate those frequency controllable components already very much exists. This system and its effects are observable every single day, anywhere in the world for anyone who watches more than the 4-frame loops the meteorologists show us.
Do you think HAARP manipulates the weather?
They admit it does. I used to have the head of HAARP, General Bitten K. Parton, on all the time. But exactly, there's giant weather modification systems, and there's weather wars between different governments, and it's all declassified.
Let's explain to people that are listening what HAARP is. High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Yes.
So the idea behind this was they wanted to do research on the aurora, and didn't they want to see if they could communicate using it and send radio waves?
They wanted
bounce
over
off
the horizon
ionosphere?
radar.
Right.
Social media is also saturated with the word HAARP. This is deliberate misdirection to keep people focused on the one facility in Alaska instead of the global grid of NEXRAD and Doppler radar stations that can be observed daily, actively manipulating weather.
I want to know the relationship between, like, what do the chemtrails have to do? Do you think Trump is going to look into the SIA project that the CIA has greenlit?
You're so locked onto this.
I'm just like, what
here's
does he
the
think?
problem with all this SIA shit. Most of what you see when you see those jets flying around, those clouds behind them, most of that is just a jet
Condensation trails.
engine. Exactly. The
And
jet
everybody
engine
confuses that with the real program.
What's
yeah.
the real program?
Well, here's the thing. You're right, and so is Joe, because the world's complex. There are secret and quasi-secret and public programs to test manipulation of the weather and weather systems.
This is true. Although normal condensation trails exist, the controlled opposition effort to portray everything that can come out of a jet engine as nothing more than spring water is ludicrous to begin with. Geoengineer David Keith explains this reality very clearly.
The novel method we've been thinking about, or it's not novel at all, it's actually exactly what happens from aircraft contrails. The novel method is that we put a condensable vapor directly out of the back of an aircraft. And that's what happens with water vapor out of the back of an aircraft. The water vapor cools by mixing with the ambient air, and then it condenses to form particles. That's the mechanism of contrail formation. So if you did that with H2SO4 directly, putting it in as H2SO4 instead of as SO2, you find that the formation of particles is completely dominated by dynamics that happen in the plume in a day, and essentially has nothing to do with the background particles. And we've tried this with the state-of-the-art. I mean, it's both true when you do back-of-the-envelope calculations, but also we've tried it with a state-of-the-art manipulation code, and it appears to be true in that code.
Frequency controllable components are added to cloud systems in this manner, and the difference in trails is plain to see.
How do they manipulate a hurricane? So the hurricane's going to happen. How do they break it up?
Okay, if it's coming into land's their problem. With aerial arrays projecting into the sky, they can break it up or strengthen it or kill it or steer it, because it's all computerized.
And they're doing that with HAARP?
Well, they've got HAARP bases all over the place. They call them Doppler radar facilities. Oh, the government wants your local city to have Doppler radar.
I thought that was like so you could have the guy in front of the screen.
But that's at like 1/10 of 1%. They can crank those arrays up that have massive. Your lights might go out when they do it a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, because they'll use the whole power of your town through the Doppler radars, and then they control it.
Again, this is true. Using the word HAARP keeps people misdirected and focused on the facility in Alaska, but every NEXRAD and Doppler radar station on the planet has very similar abilities, and they are exponentially more powerful when used in conjunction with each other. NEXRAD and Doppler radar act on the frequency controllable components in these storm systems and can manipulate storm systems in numerous ways.
Ideas for barges to pump cold water from the depth of the ocean to create some sort of a roadblock for the hurricane. Since hurricanes pull power from the water's warm temperatures, cooling the water could have theoretically lessened the impact of outright dismantle the hurricane. Well, it sounds like a good idea, though.
No, but the point is, look how loving he is.
But doesn't that sound like a genius idea? You spray cold water into the air, it'll cool off the hurricane.
More than sounding like a genius idea, it is a methodology that has been implemented for over half a century. It is not used to stop storms, however. It is used to create and fuel them, and is the foundation of global geoengineering. Bursts of water vapor from both the oceans and on land are what have been fueling storm systems on this planet for decades, and again are visible every single day.
Finish the SAI program.
But he doesn't know about this.
I know about it, but it's like a minor deal.
What do you know about the SAI program?
Look,
let's get this done with.
Most of the real programs are just like fronts for something else. It's not even real.
So you don't think they're spraying shit into the atmosphere?
No, there is a program for geoengineering.
There's a program in place, and you said it's the Doppler radar system and HAARP and what else?
And aerial spraying is still the most effective. And
what do they do?
They do have patents.
When you say aerial spraying, what are they spraying?
Barium salts, aluminum dioxide, radioactive isotopes.
They're spraying them in the air? Why are they doing that?
And the aluminum is because it does a bunch of things. They're testing a bunch of stuff. They're manipulating things.
Again, David Keith makes this reality very clear.
It turns out there's a huge literature in the nanofabrication world about making fine particles. I'll show you a picture in a moment from low vapor pressure gases. People understand how to do it pretty well, and there's nothing very hard in terms of aircraft engineering. If you go to aircraft engineers, and we've done this, they say, that would be easy, we could do this if you want us to. Whereas number 3 or number 4, putting in solid particles or making fine droplets, is much harder because it relies on spray technologies that may not exist yet. The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. We've been doing a little work on delivery. There's a study that an aircraft engineering firm called Aurora Flight Sciences is doing, and all the results of that study will be completely public. There's nothing proprietary about this. We're going to be inviting people in for a mid-study meeting soon. And they've been looking at a bunch of different delivery options, but the bottom line is that it seems pretty cost-effective and easy to do this with aircraft that are not very different from conventional aircraft. So there's no, from their point of view, nothing radical and hard. For them, radical and hard is making aircraft that fly at 100,000 feet, but not ones that fly at 70.
Once more, to put it simply. 1. Sequential and continuous water vapor generation from the ground creates and fuels cloud systems. 2. Frequency controllable components from the global spraying program are mixed into the cloud systems. 3. NEXRAD and Doppler frequency act on those components to manipulate the manufactured storm systems. In 2017, this is the only way storm systems and severe weather happen on this planet, and anyone who chooses can witness it for themselves. The people of this planet are kept from understanding this fundamentally simple system because of all the disinformation and misdirection mixed in with the simple facts. This podcast had plenty of examples of how easily the simple reality is confused, derailed, and discredited with nonsensical misdirection.
Well, let's find out what
Joe,
the most
I believe
recent
global warming is
thing is.
real. I believe it's real.
Okay.
I believe that it goes high, it goes cold. There's
Right.
always micro temperatures.
There
and
is always a big
microclimates.
change. There's shifts throughout
Change is the
time.
only thing that
Right.
ever happens.
That's I
but
think we all
paying
agree on
carbon
that.
taxes to Al Gore won't fix it.
Right.
And now there has been a warming period, but that's part of a normal global cycle based on the sun. All these astrophysicists are sure. The whole thing about claiming it's the carbon we put out, the Earth is carbon starved. There's a carbon cycle. That's the big story I want to get to, that the globalists want to tax. If they can tax oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, or sunlight, they have total control over the whole life cycle of the planet.
Okay, they're part of the intelligence community, and if they got hired, I would imagine, this is just me guessing right off the top of my head, if they got hired to assess a threat, and the threat being from global warming, like what do we have to worry about? Are we really going to lose cities? Do we really have an issue
No,
where
their
the grid
answer
goes
is
down?
give George Soros and the UN total power for a $100 trillion per decade global tax to micromanage and surveil everything humans do.
Let's
because
hear
if carbon's toxic, they've got to surveil it. Thus, they have a jurisdiction to control our lives. That's why you Google now. Bill and Melinda Gates bought all those patents, and quote, Bill Gates is going to save the world from bad weather. Bill Gates wants to stop hurricanes. Google it.
So let me
Bill Gates
ask you
owns
this.
the weather machines.
Let me pause.
Rest assured, this global geoengineering system that has existed for over half a century does not exist for the purpose of some future Al Gore carbon tax. The global NEXRAD, Doppler, and global power plant grid are not owned and operated by Bill Gates, and geoengineering is not another excuse to surveil every aspect of people's lives. These are partisan misdirections propagated by controlled opposition to keep people ignorant of the much more startling realities. This planet is rapidly and exponentially getting hotter. 150 years of a fossil fuel economy and the resulting industrial pollution are the reasons the natural water and weather cycle have long since collapsed, And the global geoengineering systems exist to cover all of that up and keep the population oblivious. This half-a-century cover-up must be exposed for what it is, once and for all. Please support Weather War 101 and the only project that can prove this simple reality. Let's finally put an end to the massive and deliberate confusion about the most important topic on this planet.